underway, and the Mets did have some troubles down in Miami, but they ended up splitting their four-game series with the Marlins, as this is episode number 28 of the Queen's Connection, a production of Patton Sports Creative. I am your host, Andrew Patton, joined by the co-host, Corne Hogavine. Corne, hello. What's the saying that we've always said, play 500 on the road? Well, that's what the Mets have done so far to start this second half of the season.
Yeah, if you lose the first game in a four-game series, it's tough. It's probably tough to expect that you will eventually will win the series. So uh, I will say it like this: 2 out of 3 in the last 3 games. I'll take that. Um, Obviously, before the series, you want to win a little bit more against a bad team. But now we are facing some good teams in the next couple of series, so have to beat them there, and then we soon forget maybe about the losses against Miami.
It really doesn't matter if the Marlins are really bad like they are this year, or the Marlins have a year like they did last year where they're really good. The Mets just have problems in Miami, and even in Queens against the Marlins are just a pesky team, and it's shown in the Mets history. So um, these games against the Marlins are never quite very easy. We'll put it that way.
No, they always tend to make us work hard. They did in this series, but it's just how it goes sometimes. On the other hand, we are beating up the Nationals this year, so it evens itself out a little bit. Um, it's not like other good teams don't have these kind of series. The Phillies, I think they lost 2 out of 3 in Oakland this year, so it happens. Um, so yeah, it, just moving on, 2 out of 2, still in a wild card spot. That's most important right now, and now time to move on and have a pretty difficult week, I would say. But I don't think that the Mets are necessarily um, not in a good spot against both those teams. But we're probably gonna talk that in the end of the episode before the Yankees series.
We
And then
will,
for the next podcast, will talk about the Braves series. So
and then the Twin Series, and on and on. That's right. Well, there's also the saying too that the other guys get paid too. So the Marlins are not just here for the Mets to beat up on. They're here to win baseball games too, despite the fact they haven't done that a whole lot lately. But they did take two from the Mets in the series, as we said, because it's a split in the four-game series.
yes,
So
so let's get into it.
let's get into it. Let's start on Friday night after the All-Star break, all that stuff. Not the way that we were hoping the second half would open up for the Mets. They lost 6-4 to the Marlins, and it was just really a kind of a clunker from Sean Manaea here. It's something we've seen with Sean this year. He does have good stretches, but kind of mixed in that good stretch, there is a little bit of a rough start, and this was a rough start for Sean Manaea. He finished the game with 5 innings, 5 runs, all earned, 8 hits, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, a home run as well. The Marlins jumped out to a 4-0 lead early. The Mets clawed their way back to make it a one-run game at one point, but a big run in the eighth inning for the Marlins to get a little breathing room there. And the way Tanner Scott's been going, it's hard to get runs off Tanner Scott. That's why he's one of the hottest trade commodities in this next week for the trade deadline. So he shut the door. So the Marlins open up the four-game series with a 6-4 win. We mentioned Manaea here, his stat line, and like I said, Sean's had good stretches, but mixed in, he has a rough outing. This was certainly a rough one for Mr. Manaea. So, what did you take away from Sean in this outing, and what was his biggest issue, and what can he correct going into his next outing?
A funny thing with Shaman, I one walk this time, but his command was off. I think I said it last podcast too that we saw Sean um, throwing some pitches middle in good counts, and I think he had a couple of those in this outing, especially with his off-speed pitches, with his secondary stuff, where he had the hitters 0-2, but just gave gave a flat one down the middle against a team that wants to chase, I would say. That's not what you want to do, and it's obviously not what Shamanaya was trying to do there. Um, so it's control, one walk in 5 innings you definitely take, but his command was just not good. Not executing those ahead in the count, 1-2, 0-2 pitches, make it enticing for the hitters to swing at, but not necessarily being strikes. Um, just didn't do that good in this outing. He didn't execute that, and it cost him a lot of hits because he was ahead in the count often. But then you still have to make your pitch, and he wasn't able to do that.
No, he certainly was not able to do that, and unfortunately, resulted in some rough couple innings there for Sean Manaea. Another theme, kind of we saw throughout the series as well, is the Mets struggled with runners in scoring position in this game. They were 1 for 7. They left 9 on base, and they got some free base runners as well because the starter Cabrera for the Marlins, he didn't even register 5 innings, but he did walk 5 batters. So the Mets did have base runners in this game, but they weren't able to do a whole lot with that. And that certainly became a bit of a topic as the series went on. I'm sure we'll dive a little bit more into that. Um, but do have to give credit to you with your Jeff McNeil player of the series prediction, and not just in this game, in other games in this series as well. He hit 2 home runs in the opener, accounted for 3 of the 4 runs for the Mets. So a nice start to the second half of the season for Jeff McNeil, and it's something that you've alluded to, and I believe Carlos Mendoza has said as well, is that maybe McNeil of late wasn't getting the results, but the at bats looked better and the ball was hit harder. So it looked like maybe just needed to get through that first half, and maybe the second half is where we're going to see perhaps Jeff McNeil break out a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so. Obviously, it would be a huge help for us for Jeff McNeil to be Jeff McNeil, but we do see Jeff McNeil's approach changing. So that went great. It's not Jeff McNeil from his batting title, Jeff McNeil. We saw, with him flailing and trying to shoot the ball the other way. We didn't see that in this series. We saw Jeff McNeil just trying to hit the ball hard, and that's a difference than Jeff McNeil, trying to find holes or do that, running thing when he tries to hit, which worked, which earlier a lot of people said, um, don't try to hit home runs. But this year, that way of hitting, that hitting style just didn't work for Jeff McNeil. And maybe the shift, I think they said it in the broadcast too, that the shift doesn't provide that big of holes for Jeff McNeil to hit it through, to try to hit it through holes. So right now he's just hitting the ball hard, and he's done that a lot better before getting results, and now he's starting to get some of those hard hit results. Um, and we also see him in his batting stance right now. It's more of a powerful stance than he when he just tries to hit it through all sorts of holes or slapping the ball. Um, so right now, I think that's a good change. Right now, I think it works for Jeff McNeil, and this is the way, just hitting the ball hard and don't necessarily care of where fielder stands or where you think the big ball is. Just try to hit the ball as hard as possible, and mostly results will come. Right now, he's doing that, and again, the results did come. So yeah, pleased with that. Um, yeah,
Some other guys looking for maybe better second halves. Adam Ottavino is one of those guys. He did come in to pitch on Friday, had a scoreless inning with a strikeout. Phil Maton also had a scoreless inning with 2 strikeouts, so that's obviously a very good sign, especially Adam Ottavino, because right now the Mets need him to be effective in this bullpen. So that was a good outing or a good sign for Ottavino.
yeah, Ravino was good to see. It was interesting to see that he threw his slider a lot more and pitched off his slider. So painting the fastball, I think he got a called strike three on a fastball on the outside corner after a couple of sliders. So guy is smart enough to figure things out in the bullpen and be better. And obviously, uh, I think it's understandable that we as fans didn't love Adam Ottavino in the bullpen, how he handled himself in the first half. And uh, but if somebody is able to return to form and find things, it's probably Adam Ottavino because he helped a lot of other people with his pitching facility get the most out of themselves. And obviously, he has had a pretty good career of his own. So good to see him working on stuff and maybe changing the arsenal of how he uses his pitches. And hopefully, a great second half for him.
Yes, we are definitely hoping Adam Ottavino finds his form in the second half of the season. So the Mets were trying to put Friday behind him going into Saturday for with a Luis Severino start. And Luis Severino was dealing on Saturday. I pitched 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts, including a big one to cap off his day. Um, so, so Luis Severino did his job. The Mets were able to scratch out a run in the fourth inning on a ground out fielder's choice RBI for Francisco Alvarez. But the one run was all they needed in this game because, like we said, the pitching was on, particularly Severino. So the Mets get a 1-0 win on Saturday. I gave you the line on the Luis Severino here, and um, there was some headlines about Severino talking smack about the Yankees and whatnot because he's still in that group chat, and what he said is quite frankly true. But no, came out, pitched really well after having that kind of weird outing against the Nationals before the All Star break. So a good start to the second half for Luis Severino. Perhaps maybe using that sweeper a little bit more often. It's something that we've been talking about on previous episodes. But obviously the four seamer was good, the sinker as well. So I hope I didn't steal your thunder there as I ask you what your favorite, what was the best part about Luis Severino this past outing?
Yeah, you stole my thunder, Andrew. That's exactly
Shocker.
what I wanted to say. More
I'm just
secondary.
queuing you up to elaborate more because you're the brains of everything.
No, you make me the brains of everything because you always are able, as the host, to ask first. Because at times you're not a dumb guy as well, Andrew. So you could do what I do easily. Um,
Maybe I will for
but
David Peterson.
well, that's then your turn. The Monday game will be your turn. Um, yeah, so, yeah, like you mentioned, more off-speed pitches, more change-up, more sweepers, sliders. He fell off maybe a little bit too much with this four-seamer sinker combination. Uh, I have to say we both noticed that. I think you noticed it first on the chat, so showing you're not a dumb guy and you could do this too. But he was had a lot more secondary pitches, and I think that's what was successful for Severino. Better pitch mix. Also, I have to add, by the way, for the first two games, the Mets did hit some hard hit balls when they had chances to score, in especially in the first two games. Where a little bit more luck, maybe it would be a different story, and you won both of those games.
Yeah, the runners in scoring position in this game, it's funny because it's the exact same for the Miami Marlins as well. So if you're a Marlins fan, you could be saying the same thing. The Mets were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. They left 10 on base in this game, so obviously not great, especially with how hot the offense had been. You were kind of expecting that the Mets would maybe tack on a little bit more than they did, but when you're getting good pitching like that, no, they kind of saved the day. So credit to Severino for the start. Also got to give credit to your boy Jose Buto with a scoreless out. I mean, all these outings are scoreless because they shut out the Marlins, but
Mm-hmm.
scoreless inning for Buto. A nice bounce back for Dendell Nunez. He did have some traffic on the bases, but registered 3 strikeouts. And Edwin Diaz closed the door as well to pick up a save. So the pitching was on point in this game when the offense was perhaps not. So the pitching picking up the offense was a very good sign. Well, I shouldn't say a very good sign, but very good that the pitching was able to keep the Marlins,
Yeah.
at bay when the offense was not there for the Mets.
Well, I'm still gonna say it. I think the offense did deserve more in that game because you want to hit the ball hard, and sometimes, yeah, it finds gloves, and then, but you still what you want to do, you did, and yeah, sometimes just not your day at that department. So I think especially we had some runners in scoring position moments where we just found gloves or the Marlins made a good play or whatever. So I think especially the Sunday game was maybe a little bit more bad offensive day than the first two.
How about I rephrase it to the offensive output was not there for the Mets. Is that better?
Yes, sure. Yeah, that's better, Andy.
Okay, there we go. I'm glad we could find the. I'm glad we could ease the tension there, where if we didn't have a big blow up, so
Oh, the tension.
lots of tension there. But
Yeah,
before
definitely. I was ready to smack you right in the face, but unfortunately, it's just a camera. So
you and many people, you and many people,
no, no, it was sarcasm, people. I wasn't ready to smack Andrew in the face. There was absolutely no tension there. He just made it out to be.
right? I'm just stirring the pot as I usually do. That's actually true
That,
though. So
that's actually true. Yes, it is true.
well, you mentioned the Sunday game, so let's just get right to it. A start for Christian Scott as the Mets were looking to take another game here from the Miami Marlins. Unfortunately, that was not the case as the Mets lost game three of this four-game series to the Marlins by a score of 4-2. The Mets did get out to a 1-0 lead thanks to a Torrens sac fly, but in the bottom half, the Marlins struck on a three-run homer from Jazz Chisholm, and that was pretty much all she wrote. The Mets did get a run from JD Martinez in the fifth inning, but the Marlins quickly got that run back in the seventh inning. So, uh, no, unfortunately, not a terrific outing, I would say, for Christian Scott. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it was as bad as some people made it out to be. It just seemed like maybe particularly that sweeper slider wasn't crisp, and that's something we had talked about in our last one of our latest episodes. Is that maybe the sweeper doesn't have that kind of diagonal break like you want to have, kind of the more east to west, which kind of leaves it flat. And um, but is that something you saw from Christian Scott in this outing? Did you agree with that? What did you think about Christian Scott?
Well, it was definitely the case on the home run. That was again a slider that moved more horizontal than vertical. I think he was slightly better than what I've seen, but it's still a bit inconsistent. He has that, still has that tendency to throw that sweeper slider horizontal, and I think the home run to Chisholm showed that because it was actually placed pretty well, but it just stayed on the same plane. So Chisholm was able to clobber it. If it has a little bit more downward action, I think Chisholm swings over it, and now he has the ability to still level it. Uh, Maybe even with it being on a good spot, it yeah it keeps the bat head in the same plane. So yeah, it's still a work in progress for Christian Scott, but overall, um, he did use a little bit of a two different sweeper slider cutter thingy. I thought was will be helpful. Still a young pitcher, still adjusting, still maybe searching. Um, I I believe the slider sweeper that stays horizontal is definitely a part of the home run problem. Um, but he's young. We have smart people for the Mets and trying to figure it out. He's a smart guy himself, probably. So I think eventually we have to like the stuff we see, but notice that there are still things to work on for it.
I would agree with that, and this kind of leads me into my next question about Christian Scott. Something we talked about last episode is potentially a stretch in the bullpen. Do you think where he's at with his innings, because now he's officially pitched the most innings in professional baseball in his career? Um, he's still working on maybe some things, getting that break on the sweeper slider. Are those things you would like to see him work on out of the bullpen, like David Stern starters have in the past? Or is this something where you think keep him in the rotation, with Senga coming back, now he's pitching every, sixth day rather than fifth day, so he gets an extra day, and that could also be beneficial to him. That's a point some people have made as well, is maybe Scott being more on that AAA minor league rotation day count rather than the pitch at a major league regular 5-man rotation. So, what do you think? Do you think keep him in the rotation for the time being, or do you think eventually at some point maybe get him some innings out of the bullpen to lessen the workload and maybe give him a chance to keep tinkering with some stuff?
Last week I would have said, probably would have said, switch Budo and Scott. But right now, I think for this year, for the role that Budo has become in this bullpen, I think Budo is enormous for this bullpen right now. Without Reed Garrett, with still some struggling arms in Adolfino and Diekman right there, I think Jose Budo did such a good job in numerous roles right now in the bullpen that you, with the bullpen also struggled at times mightily. I think you want to keep him there, although my Buto heart doesn't love it. I think for right now for the Mets, it's probably the best thing to do. I don't think you can get this kind of production from Scott out of the bullpen right now. I think it's too much of a risk, and he won't be able, with the home run issues. I think getting him in there in close games like what Buto has done right now, I think it's a big, big risk to do that with Christian Scott. So let him start. Let him figure it out. Let him work on things. Eventually, for the future, um, this is going to be very helpful. And I mean, he's maybe not great, but besides Buto, is there another arm in the minor leagues right now who will probably do better? I'm not sure about that. He did well as his struggles with control in AAA. Luke Casey has been meh when the Mets, and he's also not on the 40-man roster. The only way I see Scott leaving the rotation is if we add like a Eric Feddy guy or something like that to the Mets rotation on a trading mark. But right now, I think it's this way.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say I don't think there's anyone in AAA that is going to be a better option than Christian Scott. And like you said, right now Jose Buto is a big key to the Mets bullpen, so it's something you don't want to you know lessen your weakness at the moment. And because Buto's been a strength in that bullpen, one of the rare strengths in that bullpen at the moment, so you don't want to sacrifice that when it's been an issue for you know the majority of the season. So I agree that they're probably going to ride Christian Scott out unless they do make a trade for a starter, which I
I
doubt
doubt
it. I doubt it's
that,
going to happen. I think it's going to be more bullpen than anything. Um,
definitely.
so I think Christian Scott's going to be in this rotation for the rest of the season, unless, like you said, they make a move.
Yes, maybe eventually later in the season, if he reached the innings the Mets are viewing for Christian Scott, we could see a change at some point. But for right now, I think the success Buto has and the role he has taken in that bullpen, I think it's very important because he's becoming a late inning reliever right now, a high leverage guy, and I I think it's just too risky to put that on Scott's shoulders right now.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting. I don't want to say conundrum, but the debate to have because you obviously you want Christian Scott to start because that's his future in the big leagues, but You also have to weigh the fact that you're in a chase for a wild card spot, and of course, like how much do you want to have a guy who's still figuring things out, starting every fifth or sixth day when these games are so important for you. So it was just something to it's an interesting back and forth to have, but I think the end, the final answer is what we both agree on is that there's no one better right now to throw in the rotation than Jose Buto, but he's still valuable in your bullpen. So, Christian Scott is going to be the man for the time being.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, the Mets were hoping to leave Miami with a split going into the Monday wraparound portion of this four-game series. A start for David Peterson, and the Mets were able to do that. They won 6-4. It got dicey at times late in that game, particularly that ninth inning. Some sloppiness on the Mets' part, but the Mets did slug this game. Another home run for Jeff McNeil. He's up to 8 now on the season. Francisco Lindor with a multi-home run game as well. So that was huge. That 6-1 turned out to be pretty huge from you know, just some breathing standpoint as the Marlins chipped away in that ninth inning. But let's start for David Peterson. Went 5 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, all earned, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts, did allow a home run. Um, so I think this is kind of an outing we've seen from Peterson this year where, it was one of those outings when his control was maybe a little off and whatnot, but was able to limit the damage. So, he was kind of bend but don't break almost, I guess is the way to put it. Um, but I thought Peterson, he was okay. No, obviously things could be better, particularly with those 4 walks and 5 innings. That's not great. Um, but no, the Mets just seem to always win when David Peterson goes out there. Doesn't matter if he's at his best or perhaps at his worst. He keeps the Mets in the ball game, and I guess that's all you can ask from a back end rotation arm like David Peterson. What'd you think about David on Monday?
The guy is having a great season. Yes, he has these type of outings where his control eludes him a little bit. Got a lot of base runners on against him. I would say one base runner that was on him um, wasn't necessarily a hit because that ball was foul. That cost him a run. So it could even be better, but overall, he was a bit lucky at times with some calls, so it probably evens out a little bit in the end. The umpire, by the way, was horrendous yesterday. That call to Jess Chisholm was oof.
It was like
But
almost in the
but
other
yeah,
batter's box.
it was in the other batter's box. It was crazy. It was awful. But oh well, you take some, you lose some in this game. That was definitely the case with the home plate umpire. But still, if your bad outings are like what Peterson has done, and you can say that the Mets gave him some runs, blah blah blah. We have seen some outings where Mets pitchers weren't able to do a good job when they got a lot of runs. Peterson does. Peterson keeps you in the ball game. He maybe allows a run, one or there, but I think last 8 or something, he was the last 8 starts David Peterson made. The Mets won them all. So that you can say whatever you want. I don't really care about wins and losses, but if your team is able to win when you start, it also means that you limit the damage or keep your team in the lead. Even if you go 4 innings and allow 2 runs, you still, or 4 or 3, you still were able to limit the damage. And this type of game it was for David Peterson. So everybody, and we said it last week, everybody who says that David Peterson should go to the bullpen when we go to a 6-man rotation is nuts. This guy is a good fourth, fifth starter for any team. You could even argue with the numbers he put out. Besides the innings per start, you could argue that he's maybe even a 3. So I think the Mets are very pleased with having David Peterson in their pitching staff for years to come.
I've always said this with David Peterson. Uh, I think the expectations were a little unfair with him, coming up through the system because he's just got that first round tag placed on him for the rest of his career. So I think when people think first round, they expect a Garrett Cole level kind of guy, ace, something like that. And that's not always the case. If you can get a good quality major league starter, I'd say that's a hit. David Peterson's not a bust by any point. Um,
It's not,
he's a
yeah,
he's a he's
100%.
a good, like we said, mostly probably a 4 or 5. But with the way things have gone right now, the way he's kind of pitching more like a number 3 kind of guy. So, that the David Peterson selection back in 2017 has been a very good one for the New York Mets.
Yeah, we also should say that he had some inconsistency in seasons, but even then he had the hip issue last year, which I bet that was a huge part of his struggles because I would imagine when you having an issue with your hip and it can get your whole mechanics can become messy. So that's something I would see as a fluke. And the year before that, he was actually also really good in in a weird role where he was in the bullpen at times, but then started at times, make some spot starts, being in AAA, and he was really good that year. So I think last year you can see as a wash that he now has actually been pretty good over the last 3 years. Besides some injury issues last year. So I'm very pleased with David Peterson. You always said that he's your guy, still your guy, but I never was that low on David Peterson. Maybe in his minor league days for the last time, but since he became a major leaguer, I think it's 2020 when he made his debut, had a pretty solid, showing there. 2021 was meh, but I mean, it's a young guy, so we see that sometimes, the sophomore slump. So since then, he's just actually he's been good. So definitely take that for your first round draft pick.
Yeah. I mean, is he perfect? No, obviously he's got the control issues at times and whatnot, but if you take the whole package, it's not a bad it's not a bad pitcher. Not a bad pitcher at all. So
No, not at all. I mean, 3.14 ERA right now or something like that.
yep, yep. He's 9 starts. He's 5-0 if you care about win loss. Obviously the walks are high. 23 walks and 8 and 2/3. So you'd like that to be limited a bit. The whip is at 1.48, so obviously you want that to come down. But
Yeah.
36 strikeouts. He's got a good decent strikeout total for a guy who's mostly a sinker. Guy who wants the ball on the ground, and he's gotten balls on the ground this year. So I'd say overall, David Peterson is doing exactly what he's supposed to do.
Limited runs. That's what you need to do. And yes, a better whip. Obviously, you want that. Lower walks. Obviously, you want that. But I think after the hip surgery, uh, messing up his mechanics, it also takes some time um, to really readjust to that. I bet. I'm not a pitcher, but I bet that's definitely part of it. So yeah, Dave Pearson shouldn't get as much uh, hate as he sometimes gets. We also need those type. You also need those starters, and I think Mets fans need to be glad with years of. We had some years where the Mets weren't able to develop their starters.
Yeah, they've had that stretch where they couldn't really get guys in a consistent role in their rotation. But Peterson is he's a outlier in that argument. Hopefully Christian Scott's gonna be that guy too. Some other guys in the minor leagues are
Buto,
going to be on their way. Buto when he's in the rotation as well. So the Mets have some. They've been able to develop some pitchers of late, which is obviously we're very happy about.
yeah, and we definitely needed that because I think it's a big part of spending big is probably starting pitching, and I think even next year it's good to have 3 spots maybe already in place without the need of adding a lot of starting pitching. Obviously, we still probably need to add some, but it's good to see that it won't be as big of a need as the Mets had in recent years.
No question about that. And the middle infield in this game, offensively, led the way. Well, obviously, Lindor with 2 home runs, McNeil with another. Um, we did our Jeff McNeil spiel already, so we don't have to like get too much into that. But if there is something you'd like to say, about McNeil
Yeah,
or Lindor, go right ahead.
Lindor. I mean, Lindor's OPS right now is 799, so it's very close to 800. And I just want to give that guy uh, more props than we already do because after his start, getting it all the way up to 799, just that's elite if you have an 800 OPS, or really at least really good if you have an 800 OPS in how the league and the hitting is up right now. The hitting has become more of a difficulty. So 800 OPS for a full season is really good. And then you consider how bad he was for probably the first month and a half, whereas OPS was probably around 400 at times. It's crazy. It's crazy how good he has been. Um, yeah, go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just to say he should have been the All Star probably for this team. The way that he's
Yeah,
performed since moving to the All Star, the top of the order in mid May till the All Star break, he was arguably their best player. I mean, still is probably their best player. Um, so it's a shame that Lindor's gotten kind of the screws of late when it comes to All Star selections. If you care about stuff like that, I mean, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it, but when people make arguments for uh, Hall of Fame, dare I say, they're gonna those are things they're gonna look at. Unfortunately, whether it's fair or not, it's what they look at.
definitely.
So disappointing for Lindor because he deserved it anyway. The Mets did in this game go for 7 runners in scoring position. Um, so that's still something to work on this post All Star break, and especially with these games coming up, you're going to need to capitalize on every chance you can get. So I'm looking at guys like Pete Alonso to pick up the pace here because there were 2 times he grounded into any double plays and the Mets had a runner on third base. Um, so if he wants that big payday, gotta start gotta start playing better. If you want Freddie Freeman money, start driving in some runs, Pete. So that's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah,
But I have a lot more to say about it, but I'm gonna keep it condensed because we've been rambling
yeah,
on about this 4 game series for quite
yeah,
a while now. So
yeah.
I'll just leave it at
So
that.
moving on, Andrew.
Moving on, I think we will hand it over to you for the minor league minute if you're ready to rock and roll with that.
Definitely. Well, luckily there are some rainouts, so us rambling about the 4 game series helps that probably the minor league minute or whatever is going a little bit faster. So Dominican Summer League Mets, they did play on during the break. On Thursday, they had a combined 13 errors between the two teams, something that's been a major issue for that team lately. Congrats to Edward Lantica and Jose Guevara as they were named the Dominican Summer League All Stars. That's all I have for the Dominican Summer League. Florida Complex League was crazy because they got rained out. Yesterday they played a 6 inning nothing game and also was shot made short, so suspended. That's the word I was looking for. So not a lot of action for the Florida Complex League. One guy I want to mention is Albert Nunez, another position player the Mets signed from another team and made into a pitcher. He made a second outing, striking out two in a perfect inning of work. 2 innings so far, not scored upon. So that's now the second converted pitcher the Mets got from another team when they were position players. So that's an interesting thing to see. St. Lucie Mets, Drew Gilbert and Jacob Reimer moved up to St. Lucie in their rehab. Gilbert went 1 for 3 with an RBI on Friday. and Reimer went 3 for 5 with two doubles and an RBI. Austin Trozer came in and didn't pitch, so wondering if he got hurt. The bottom of the order had a lot of success on Saturday. Joe Hiro Cuevas drove in four. Kevin Villavicencio had four hits. And Willie Hannes had three hits while driving in two. Unfortunately, the St. Lucie pitching was dreadful, allowing 11 runs and walking 12 batters, so eventually was a loss. Um, Boston Barrow keeps hitting solidly for St. Lucie after a 4-5 day on Sunday, collecting two doubles. Brooklyn, two hit days for Nick Morabito, Carol Paz, Callum Clark in a 6-5 win uh, after a 5-run ninth inning on Friday. Big tying 2-run homer from Omar de Los Santos with two outs tied the game for the Cyclones in that win. Christopher Serrero had the walk-off hit in the 10th. They both had good days on Sunday too. Omar de Los Santos went deep again, and Suero drove in two in a 2-for-5 day. Kate Morris struck out 8 over 3 and a third innings, but did allow 3 runs, just 2 earns. He didn't walk a batter. And a good day on Sunday for QSO native Donovan Antonia, as he went 3 for 5 with two RBIs. Binghamton, the Mets traded Tyler J for TJ Shook, a swingman with a 4.90 ERA this season and a strikeout rate over 10 per 9. I was pretty shocked that we got something for a DFA'd Tyler J. You can respond after the Mets minor league minute what your thoughts were about it. Cyclones walk off. Rumble Ponies did the same on Friday on a Matt Rudick 2-run homer. Ryan Clifford also homered. His 13th since joining Binghamton. Stanley Consuega went 3 for 3 and homered on Sunday, getting his groove more and more in Double A. The Rumble Ponies didn't do as well Saturday, getting no hit. It spoiled a solid 4 innings from Nolan McLean, who allowed 2 runs, 1 earned on 1 hit, 3 walks, while striking out 3. And Brandon Sproat struck out 6 over 4 innings of 3-run ball, probably one of his worst outings in Double A. Syracuse, solid outing for Tyler McGill, went 5 innings of 1-run ball. He allowed just 2 hits but walked 4. The run allowed was unearned. McGill struck out 5 and lowered his AAA ERA to 2.38. Mike Vessel came out of the bullpen behind McGill and pitched 3 innings of 1-run ball. Rylan Thomas went 3 for 5 in an RBI on Friday, and he did the same on Sunday. On Friday, Luis Angel Acuña scored 3 runs in a 2-hit game, and Cortez hit a 3-run bomb. Luke Ritter also went 3 for 4 with 2 runs batted in and drove in 2 runs Sunday too, so his RBI total keeps rising. Syracuse won on Saturday besides a poor Senga outing. Senga allowed 5 runs on 8 hits in 3 innings. Syracuse got scoreless ball from their bullpen. Orsi pitched 2 and Wilkin Ramos pitched 1 and 2/3 as the highlights for that great bullpen outing. On the offensive side, Syracuse got the first AAA home run from JT Schwartz, where Beatty drove in 3 with a 2-for-4 day, and Acuna had a 3-hit day. So he's been pretty darn good. Dominic Hamill was solid over 4 and 2/3 innings in his outing, allowing 2 runs on 3 hits, 2 walks, and striking out 5. That was it, Andrew.
There you have it, the minor league minute, and I will comment on the Tyler J thing. Very surprised they got something for a 31-year-old journeyman, you know, left-handed reliever. So, and let's not overlook the fact that they made this trade with the Brewers. So David Stearns is very familiar with this arm that they've acquired. So he probably knows something there about him that he thinks if we'll get him in the Mets pitching system, and maybe that 4.9 ERA is going to come down a little bit. We should also mention too there were a couple other roster moves. The Mets claimed Alex Young off waivers, a left-handed reliever. They also signed Logan Porter. He's a catcher, so some more catching depth for the Mets as well. So if they lose Francisco Alvarez or Luis Torrens, they're not really caught with their pants down per se. They have a capable major league backup, perhaps. He's had a cup of coffee or a short stint in the major leagues, but it's always someone with major league experience. So I think the Mets are just shoring up
Yeah,
some depth there.
that didn't help that the Mets had injuries to Hayden Sanger and I forgot Joe Hudson.
Joe Hudson.
So yeah, it's probably needed that they added a AAA catcher. I think that's more of the case than with two of those guys. Joe Hudson we saw very briefly uh, as a guy who will probably have that spot. You didn't need Porter, but eventually the only thing that you lost was Cole Sulser, who was DFA'd. I think we can handle that with all due respect to Cole Sulser.
I would agree with that as well. So I don't think, and with the Mets likely adding bullpen at the deadline or around the deadline, which we're expecting. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed, but that's the expectation. So if they do add some guys, a guy or two, Sulcer kind of moves down on the depth chart anyway. So if you lose him, you lose him. But I don't know. We'll see. I was gonna say I have a hard time expecting someone will claim him, but you never know. You never know with these major league transactions. So
Wouldn't be heartbroken by that. So
But before we jump into this Yankees preview, just a couple things to share. The Mets' current wild card standing update. They're sitting in the third spot, only a half game behind. The Cardinals were the second wild card spot, but the Pirates, Padres, they're a half game behind the Mets. The Arizona's a game out. Chicago is 3.5. So looks like there is starting to get some separation there, but there's also some teams that are they're right there. And the Mets are not on. They're not too far behind the Braves either. Three back
three
and
games
three
now.
back, I believe. Um, so the Mets and with four coming up with Atlanta. It's gonna be a very interesting series at City Field, no question about that. And if people are thinking we're making too much out of Jeff McNeil's series against the Miami Marlins. His last 15 games, he's hitting 268. He's got a 311 on base, but a 634 slugging. So it kind of alludes to what you were saying about a little bit more power approach, perhaps from Jeff McNeil of late. So that and does include, I mean, obviously, he hit three of these four home runs in the last 15 games in this Miami series, but he has driven in 11 runs. So Jeff McNeil, not gonna not gonna say he's back, but he's showing signs that he is turning things around.
Exactly.
So there's the facts to back our perhaps Jeff McNeil hype, you know. So I just don't see people saying like, oh, you're making too much out of this, whatever. But the numbers are kind of trending upward for Jeff McNeil.
Maybe eventually we did make too much out of things. We probably did that in the past too. But hey, that's us trying to make sense of some things. What's happening in Mets world? We aren't. We are fans just as many others. So
That is definitely the case, and hopefully the Mets fans will have more to brag about against the Yankees as they have finished. They're having round two of the Subway Series in the Bronx, as that begins tonight at 7:05. It's going to be Jose Quintana going up against Luis Gil, and then it caps off tomorrow with Sean Manaea, also a 7:05 start. Sean Manaea going up against Garrett Cole. So the two pitchers the Mets faced the last time these two teams squared off. And once again, the Mets are throwing two lefties against the Yankees. So I don't think there is much coincidence on the Mets' part of having the two lefties go out there. So it worked out the last time. Hopefully, it does the same. But unfortunately, they're playing at Yankee Stadium, so any fly ball to right field is probably a home run. So you do have to take that into consideration as well. But obviously, all these games are big.
I preview for next year, Andrew.
Oh yeah, maybe. But no, all these games are big, like I said. And obviously, with these being the Yankees, there's a little bit more hype around it. But if the Mets are going to win these games, they're going to need some guys to come up big in certain moments. So that's going to lead us to our player of the series predictions. You get the pitcher, I get the batter, so you get to go first.
Yeah, tough, tough, tough. Difficult, difficult, difficult. I'm going with Daniel Nunez. Uh, Big outs, maybe getting some close games at some point. I know we have beaten up uh, Gil, or however you pronounce it, and Cole in the other outing they had, but I think it's tough to expect that you do it twice in a row. But we will see, maybe. So I think the Mets need at some point some big outs from Daniel, and I think he's gonna get them. Maybe even getting Aaron Judge on strike three. Nice slider down and away.
I'm going to go with a guy who had a big game. Well, he had a couple good games against the Yankees the last time they faced each other, and that's Mark Vientos. I think right now, kind of where Pete Alonso's at, a little bit with JD as well. Maybe JD Martinez is starting to break through a little bit, but unfortunately, those guys in the middle of the Mets lineup haven't really been the big guys to drive runs in. So I think it's key for the younger guys like Alvarez and Vientos to, if those guys can't come through in the clutch, it's big for them to come through. And I like Mark Vientos' opposite field power. I think that's going to play well at Yankee Stadium. Like I said, anything to right field is up. It could be out of the ballpark. So I think Vientos. Um, I'm going to look to him to have a big series here at Yankee Stadium for the Mets.
Well thought of, Andrew. Good job.
Oh,
Such
see,
as opposite power. Outstanding.
not a dumb guy. Not a dumb guy.
No, I've said that already. I'm not going to say that you are right now, but
People just think, I just tee you up because you're the nerd, the smarty
yes, but
pants and everything. But I can.
that's what you do. That's not because I want that. That's because you do that. That's the difference.
That's right.
You can you can start like you did with Peterson this time. At some point, you can start on a game and say what you think first instead of just giving the ball to me.
Well, I just know people respect your opinion so much that I feel it's important for it to, for
That's
you to
not
get
true,
that
Andrew.
out there. What do you mean that's not
That
true?
that's not true. That's just because I maybe share it a little bit more. But maybe uh, they like you too if they listen, and but they just talk to me because I share it, Andrew.
That's right. You are the distributor of the content.
Exactly. So that's also more your problem than my problem, Andrew.
I like to keep a low profile.
Yeah, I know you do. Start a podcast. That's a smart idea to keep a low profile.
Well, I mean, keep a low profile. I don't go out. I'm not a public image. I'm not in the public's eye all the time, and I just kind of want to keep things on the down low, not cause too much controversy because there's so much of that going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna wrap things up here, and uh, we thank you, Mr. Hogeveen, for joining as always, and um, it's gonna be an interesting couple of games here in the Bronx, that's for sure.
Yes, we will back at you very soon with a two-game series.
Yes, we will have we had a little bit of a layoff between episodes, figuring with the All-Star break and then how long this Marlins series was, but a quick two-game series means we have just a couple days to digest things, and then we're right back on recording. So
Hopefully.
hopefully we have a lot of positive things to sink our teeth into.
That would be nice.
That would be very nice. Hopefully some good outings from Quintana and a bounce back from Anaya, and the Mets offense can strike with runners in score position. If we can get those going, I feel pretty confident the Mets can take a game or two here in the Bronx.
Yeah, and then we will take at least one.
Take at least one. 500 on the road, over 500 at home. That's what we want. So
Sounds good to me.
sounds good to
Sounds
you.
like
Well, I think we will. Now we're going to wrap things up. We thank you for listening. This has been the Queen's Connection, a production of Patton Sports Creative. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow on the social media, Facebook, Twitter. Just search the Queen's Connection. We're bound to be one of the first things to pop up. Also, like I said, like, subscribe if you on Spotify, YouTube, doesn't matter. Make sure to leave comments and all that stuff. And we will talk to you on Thursday before the Braves series after the Mets and Yankees battle in the Subway Series.